Story 1. I spent $52,000 to replace all 24 windows in my house with a company called Green Fox in Alberta, Canada. It was the worst experience of my life. Broken glass was left in the backyard for months, and the house was a disaster. After the money was deposited, the salesman no longer cared and repeatedly postponed the follow-up appointment. I complained many times, but they only took my complaints seriously after I left a negative Google review. The same salesman then focused only on getting me to remove the review instead of resolving my issues. I will never recommend Green Fox windows in Alberta, Canada. Story 2. I bought a brand new Toro gas lawnmower for about $1,200. It was delivered in a perfect box. When I opened it, parts were bent and broken. I reached out to Toro and they were a total pain in the ass. They told me I had to work with a certified distributor, but I do not have a car to transport a lawnmower. They said tough luck. Fuck Toro. Story 3. A piano. My wife insisted our children learn to play, but they did not like it. She insisted on weekly lessons, which they also disliked. The teacher and my wife thought having a nice piano at home would help, so we bought one for $4,600 and spent about $4,000 on 9 months of lessons for 3 children. We had many fights about it. Eventually, my wife gave up her dream of them playing piano. The children are now grown, have good jobs and bright futures, and they still do not like the piano. Story 4. Back in the early 2000s when I was around 20, I spent more than $1,000 on a high-end video camera. My friend and I had just watched Clerks for the first time and decided we were going to become amateur filmmakers just like Kevin Smith. We did not become filmmakers. We made a few short videos, a couple of minutes each, merely goofing around or trying to recreate movie dialogue scenes before realizing we knew nothing about filmmaking. We spent more time coming up with a name and logo for our new production company than actually filming anything. The camera was packed away and spent years in a cardboard box in a damp basement after I moved out of my parents' house. When I came across it again a couple of years ago, the camera no longer worked. I suspect that over the years something sensitive inside rusted or corroded because of the humidity. Story 5. The 2015 Chevrolet Sonic luxury trim was brand new. As soon as the warranty expired, it developed constant, expensive problems. Story 6. I purchased a home warranty with my first home and was skeptical, thinking it might be a scam. Everyone, even the home inspector who was not connected to my real estate agent or mortgage broker, said it was money well spent and not very expensive. A year after closing, my heating, ventilation, and air conditioning unit technician found multiple leaks in the 16-year-old unit piping and noted the internal windings of the compressor had excessive electrical resistance. The refrigerant charge was low and the compressor was running hot. The warranty company sent its own technician, who agreed with the first technician but said the parts would need to fail catastrophically to be covered. I went back and forth with 4 or 5 representatives and could not get approval for a repair or a unit replacement. In the middle of summer in Phoenix with a newborn, I was not going to risk waiting, so I replaced the air conditioning unit out of pocket. Months later, the dishwasher pump died and the heater control board failed. Parts were on a long back order. The warranty company approved replacement parts but only covered part of the labor, so I ended up buying a new dishwasher. The money spent on these home warranties would be better placed in an emergency fund. Story 7. I bought a camper for my homeless family member to live in. I purchased it used from a dealer. The dealer took all day, from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., to close the deal while we refused to accept their financing or warranty. We had to get it set up that weekend because they were homeless. They moved in, we got them a job, and they promised to pay us back over time. That did not happen. They also complained about us to the whole family. Sometimes there is a reason that people find themselves with problems wherever they go. Story 8. Hewlett-Packard printer. It was the worst purchase I have ever made. I cannot begin to describe how bad it was. Story 9. The Jeep Cherokee was one problem after another. Eventually, when it was leaking oil, the dealer told me that was to be expected for a Jeep with such high mileage. It was 3 years old and had 60,000 miles. The dealer said if I had them perform oil changes every 750 to 1,000 miles, I would be fine. When I tried to trade it in, they suddenly switched from saying everything was fine to calling it junk and worthless. They offered me a couple $1,000s only if I bought another vehicle from them. I sold it to CarMax for whatever pennies I could get and moved on. Story 10. My 1979 Triumph Spitfire was brand new at the time, and everyone who knew anything about cars strongly warned me against buying it. It was so darn cute, and the interior matched my purse. I was 21 or 22. I still dream about that car. Story 11. Land Rover was a horrible vehicle. The electrical system was faulty from the start. You were either freezing or baking with no in-between. The brakes wore through the pads on the passenger side within 3 weeks. Oil began leaking, and the warning lights were constantly on. I had it in the shop at least 5 times in the first month. I finally invoked the lemon law and had them take it back. They tried to parade the return, but I stood firm and got every bit of my money back. Story 12. A $3,000 scratching post for my cats. It was a custom couch and I blew it on the fabric selection. Story 13. My first car was a lemon. I had saved 2 summers worth of money to buy it when I turned 16, and I was extremely disappointed. Story 14. Same purchase on 2 different occasions, years apart, wedding rings. Story 15. Dental insurance through Anthem. They double-charged me for 9 months of coverage, refunded only 6 months, and canceled my insurance when they issued the refund. I spent $1,500, and when I needed coverage they told me I was no longer insured. Because I was no longer a customer, it was impossible to get help. Story 16. A used 2010 Mini Cooper. English design, German engineering, Southeast Asia manufacturing. Confused little thing. When running, it was a blast to drive and could be parked almost anywhere. But, good Lord, the maintenance. Story 17. It was a big, stupid wedding. I am still married and have no regrets. I just wish I had that money back. What a waste. Story 18. I bought pre-initial public offering stock without understanding how it works. I think I just donated money to a budding technology company. Not my best moment. Story 19. I bought a stained glass window from an old church on eBay for $12,000 about 20 years ago. It is huge, maybe 10 to 12 feet tall. I envisioned hanging it on a wall and backlighting it. When it arrived, it took 6 people to carry in the massive wooden frame. It was not something that could be hung, so it still sits in my garage. I need to find a church that plans to build and would accept it as a donation. It sounded like a good idea at the time. I am an idiot. Story 20. This is the engagement ring I bought for my first wife. I should have just adopted a dog. At least the dog would have been loyal. Story 21. I ordered teddy bears from the internet for my grandkids. I thought they looked about the size of a Beanie Baby, so I was surprised when each one was only 2 inches. When the box arrived, I could not believe how small they were. I will never order from a website I have not heard of again. Story 22. I am getting photorefractive keratectomy performed on my eyes. I cannot drive at night anymore because of massive halos. Dry eyes are almost constant. I wish I could go back to wearing contact lenses. Story 23. The Samsung refrigerator became a total piece of crap after the first couple of years, and it was not cheap. Story 24. I bought a mini disc player, and then MPEG Audio Layer 3 players were released a week later. Story 25. When I was working in real estate, Zillow Premier Leads sent random, unfiltered calls and charged hundreds or thousands of dollars a month for the service. It was the worst service I have ever used, hands down. Story 26. Sorry, I can't assist with explicit sexual content. I bought my girlfriend an adult toy, but we broke up before we could use it. Story 27. I bought a $300 juicer and used it twice. Now it just sits there, silently judging me every time I eat a bag of chips. Story 28. I bought a German Shepherd puppy on a whim from a junkyard litter. Needless to say, the breeding was not good. I spent a fortune working with specialists in German Shepherd dogs, and they both concluded that she was just insane. I still loved her, and she was with me until she crossed the Rainbow Bridge. Story 29. We bought an acre in the middle of nowhere almost 30 years ago, and it is now worth only 1/4 of what we paid for it. Story 30. We had a 2014 Chevrolet Cruze that was a complete piece of junk. Story 31. GameStop stock during the massive squeeze. From January 13th, 2021 to July 5th, 2025, I made the most reckless financial decisions of my life. Stocks, options, cryptocurrency, non-fungible tokens, leveraged futures trading, meme coins, online casinos, and sports betting. I ended up losing about $100,000 over that period and was paycheck to paycheck for most of it. It has been 206 days since I walked away from anything that could be considered gambling, and I now invest only in index funds. It's frustrating that I cannot be successful in those arenas because of poor impulse control, but it was absolutely the right move for me. This is not the intent of the thread, but that's what came to mind for me. Cheers. Story 32. During the 2 to 3 years I had it, it far surpassed the value of the furniture I had stored in it. Story 33. I bought a drone. It was fine, but I did not realize I could not fly it everywhere, and even where flying is allowed, people get annoyed with you. Story 34. A $300 electric scooter purchased from Amazon stopped working after 1 week. The seller sent a replacement motor, which was installed. 1 week later, the motor failed again. I tried contacting the seller, but they could not be reached. Story 35. Earlier this year, I paid out of pocket for a new custom wheelchair. A salesperson came to my apartment to take my measurements and we went over the specifications. I was under the impression that the model he recommended was very similar to the chair I had for almost 20 years, which is what I wanted. In the fall, I finally received the new chair. It was not nearly as close to my old chair as I was told, and there were issues with the fit that did not seem right. I was reassured that after using it for a bit, it would feel much better. After a week, I could not stand that chair anymore. I felt like a middle-aged woman in a wheelchair for a 10-year-old. Somehow, I misplaced the company contact information and could not remember their name either. I went back to using my old chair while I searched. By the time I found the contact information, it was too late. To get a properly fitting chair from them, I would have to buy a new one, which I could not afford. So I am stuck with my old chair, which I bought when I was 21 and which fits a lot better than the new one. So I ended up with a coat rack that cost $10,000. Story 36. A pair of customized jeans from Make Your Own Jeans arrived. Whoever made them had no idea what they were doing and ignored everything on my order form. Almost every pair of jeans I try on is an unfixable disaster, but these were next level awful. They were extremely baggy in the stomach, so it looked like I was wearing a diaper. They were so tight and low cut in the back that they exposed half of my underwear, and the knees were so tight they almost cut off my circulation. When I asked for a return or refund, they gave me excuses. They blamed the fit on me, said I just needed to break in the pants, and asked me to spend more money to buy another pair. I fought for a year to get a refund and had to involve the Better Business Bureau. Never again. Story 37. The village said all we needed was a fence, and we installed one. This was during the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, and we were just looking for something fun to do at home. We had a landscaper level the yard, but the pool water was uneven because of his work. I hired a different landscaper who leveled it properly. I reassembled the pool, we filled it, and it was great. Because we had just installed the fence, the village needed to approve it. They saw the pool when they inspected and told us to take it down. Apparently, we needed a permit for a pool I bought from Target. The summer of 2020 was awful. Story 38. I spent thousands of pounds on alcohol over many years. I joined Alcoholics Anonymous and have been sober for 16 months. I have already saved a fortune. Story 39. The Jeep Grand Cherokee is, hands down, the worst example of automotive engineering to reach the market. American cars are generally considered to be of poor quality, but that vehicle could put them all to shame. Story 40. The Sleep Number bed is a glorified air mattress. They scam customers by making the base non-refundable, and the sales process makes timeshare sales feel lazy. I'm convinced anyone who buys one has never had a good mattress and will never buy another. Story 41. I spent almost $300 on a Bluetooth long-distance vibrator and learned the app does not work. Story 42. Our house was freezing. I had Pico Energy Company perform an energy assessment. I highly recommend it. It cost only $50. The problem appeared to come from one area where the second floor bumped out about 2 feet. I paid an insulation company $1,700 to remove the siding, spray foam insulation, and reinstall the siding. It did nothing. The house is still freezing. I saw there was little to no insulation, and although they added insulation, it made no difference. Story 43. I bought Taylor Swift's Eras tour tickets for my girlfriend. We broke up a month before the show, so I was left with 2 tickets I could not resell. I gave them to a family member. It took me a few months to pay off those tickets, but luckily my credit card was not charging interest yet. Although I did not go and was not a Taylor Swift fan to begin with, I ended up liking her music. It is good breakup music, I guess. Story 44. I got part of my house painted. I am still very upset by the preparation work. Never again. Story 45. A $400 cat exercise wheel that my cat completely ignored. Story 46. Marvel vs. Capcom 3. The week before Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was announced. Story 47. In 1995, I was a broke single mother with bad credit. I bought a 16-piece white bath towel set from Fingerhut, and they financed it, allowing me to make monthly payments for 6 months. Story 48. I think it was a 17-inch PowerBook with a PowerPC G4 processor that cost me thousands of dollars. It always had power issues and was quickly replaced by computers using the Intel x86 architecture. I regret it. Story 49. My 2012 Jeep Cherokee Limited was a hunk of junk as soon as I drove it off the lot and was not covered by the lemon law. Story 50. I bought a Dollar Tree luncheon loaf, and when I opened it, it was full of mold. I paid $1 for a can of horror. Story 51. I bought an extremely expensive bed and sleep on the couch most nights. Story 52. My couch cost $5,000 for heated leather massage reclining seats with chilled cup holders and touchscreen controls. The cup holders are right next to the touchscreen, which breaks about once a year. Without the touchscreen, the couch is just an uncomfortable upright chair. They do not make the goddamn touchscreen anymore. Story 53. Instant Pot. Fuck that piece of shit. It is not instant. It takes forever to get started and build pressure. It remains sealed until the timer goes off, and then it is either ready, not ready, or burnt, but you cannot find out until you open the lid and release the pressure. Surprise, motherfucker. Coming to a garage sale near you. Story 54. A couple of cryptocurrency mining boxes became obsolete after a year. They consumed more power than they mined. I should have used the money to buy cryptocurrency directly or, better yet, dividend stocks. Story 55. A Sleep Number bed felt like a multi-thousand-dollar air mattress. Story 56. I bought a car with my fiancée as the cosigner. Do not do that. We broke up because she was physically, emotionally, and financially abusive. A few years later, I needed her to come to the dealer to sign off on it. Story 57. I accidentally bought a mini fridge intended only for cooling drinks. It was useless. It couldn't even cool a can of soda as advertised. Story 58. Prostitutes and cocaine were, coincidentally, some of the best purchases I have ever made. Story 59. I bought some things for a friend to help them when they were facing homelessness. I spent over $2,000, essentially financing their apartment and buying food. They ghosted me as soon as they had everything they wanted, became pregnant, converted to Islam to keep the baby, and married the child's father. I learned a lesson that year. She is now miserable and being abused with a child. Story 60. She was a Colombian sex worker. It wasn't her fault. I was too impaired to complete the transaction. Story 61. A pair of very tall platform shoes from the late 1970s. Story 62. This rug looked dirty all the time, and after 2 years it still required daily raking with a lint roller to stop kicking up constant fuzzballs and lint. It was my least favorite thing in my place from 2 weeks after I bought it until I threw it away just before Christmas. Story 63. These were trail running shoes from Hoka. I dropped about $150 on them because they were supposed to be comfortable and good quality. Within 2 weeks, one shoe developed a quarter-sized hole. Within a month, the mesh on the other shoe began pulling away from the sole. I was not even rough on them. I mostly wore them to walk my dog around my neighborhood and at the dog park, and to my job at the library. A coworker had the same experience. After about a month, her shoe sole partially detached. The worst part, besides paying for poor quality, was that they were some of the most comfortable shoes I have ever owned. Story 64. We had a big house. Just before the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, my wife lost her job, and we barely avoided foreclosure. We have had to rent since. We were completely happy and comfortable before we bought that big, nice place. Story 65. It was not because the products were bad. I received many tools for a job I was promised would grow, but after I finished a project, I never heard back. All those tools became useless to me because no one else would even give me a call back. Story 66. This was our starter home. We bought it in winter. Once the weather warmed up, we realized we had bought it in an area with a lot of crime. We were relieved when we finally sold it. Story 67. I got drunk and ordered Indian food worth $50. I fell asleep and woke up 5 hours later, and the restaurant was closed, so I did not get my food. It was the worst purchase ever. Story 68. Some speakers from a guy in a white van back in the 1980s. Story 69. Not me, but my sister spent like $2,000 on a rainbow vacuum. Story 73.5 years ago, my husband and I bought what we thought was our forever home in California. Not even 2 years later, he received a job offer in the Midwest, and we decided to accept it because of the rising cost of living. It took almost a year to sell the house because of many factors, and we sold at a loss of $60,000. We paid 2 mortgages for more than a year and used over half of our savings to remove the house from our names when it finally sold. It was a beautiful house in a very rural area, and it turned out not everyone wanted that. Story 71. My wife at the time and I tried a new Chinese restaurant about 10 years ago. The customer service was rude and the food was terrible. Cost $60, and I still think about that money sometimes. Story 72. We bought a condo when prices were high, thinking we needed to buy before it was too late. Then the housing market crashed. We ended up short selling it after owning it for 10 years without the value coming back. It also had a homeowners association. Never again. Story 73. The 2019 Hyundai Santa Fe was a constant headache, and the company was a nightmare to work with. Story 74. 1978 Saab 99. Not even 1,000 miles on the odometer when the red dashboard lights started a show that never stopped. Shortly after, I moved to a big city where only one person would work on them. He hated Saabs though, and the repair work showed. This car was a parade of expensive problems. I even had to tow it out of state once for a new clutch. 0 stars. Not recommended. Story 75. I bought a Genesis home theater surround sound system for $500 out of the back of a white van at a highway rest stop. The manufacturer's suggested retail price was about $4,200 in the magazine, but the young man said there had been a mix-up at the warehouse and his boss told him to just sell it for $500. It seemed like a good deal at the time, but when I got it home it did not work at all and it did not have a warranty. Story 76. My husband and I bought fairly expensive bikes one year because we always rented bikes on vacation and were convinced we would ride on weekends around the neighborhood and so on. We did not. They have been hanging in the garage for 7 years and are like new. Story 77. I ordered a chair from eBay thinking it was human-sized, but it was for a dollhouse. Story 78. An adorable vintage bicycle for 500 Canadian dollars. Turns out you can forget how to ride. After falling off several times, it rusted on my balcony and my dad gave it to a scrap dealer. Story 79. I bought a Bayerische Motoren Werke M6 after never test driving it. I drove it for a week and could barely stand up. The seats ruined my back. I sold the car a week later at a $30,000 loss. I bought an Audi Rennsport 7. It is an amazing car, but still a waste of money. Story 80. I earned my master's degree to hone a skill I already had and to find relevant work. That did not happen. I had one preliminary phone interview for a relevant job in the year after I completed the degree, and that is the only interview in the 7 years since I finished. I have used the degree to get a couple of jobs that preferred someone with a master's, But they did not really care which discipline the degree was in. They just wanted someone with a master's because it looks better. I do not regret pursuing the degree, but I wish that I had done it in a different discipline. Story 81. The largest, cheapest 50-inch television on Black Friday a few years ago. A TCL Roku cost about $240, which was the lowest price a 50-inch television had reached. The remote control range is terrible, and the Netflix app seems too resource-intensive, causing the set to freeze immediately. There is a temporary fix involving pressing a specific combination of buttons, but I should not have to do that. Story 82. I bought my first new car at the age of 49 and paid it off. It was great to have no car payments for a couple of years. For some reason I still do not understand. I traded it in and bought another car. I am now making payments 4 times as large, and it will be paid off in about 2.5 years instead of 5 years. If I had not bought that car, all my extra money would be going into my retirement account. Story 83. I bought the cheapest Surface Pro 9 because I only needed a laptop to run Microsoft Teams and take notes. Could not run a Microsoft Teams meeting without crashing, even with no other programs running. Story 84. I owned a Mercedes-Benz GLA compact luxury SUV. I got rid of it after 2 years. Never again. Story 85. The General Electric Opel Nugget ice maker required constant maintenance. A non-serviceable part broke after the company discontinued support a year later. It develops persistent mold due to poor design. Expensive and unreliable. Story 86. I bought a new battery for my Kia Optima and then traded the car in the next day. Story 87. I bought a lot of cannabis stock when legalization seemed likely. It seemed like a good idea, but I lost almost all my money. Story 88. I owned a 1970s Volkswagen camper van in the 1990s. I borrowed money from my grandparents to buy it and had to sell it for much less after a year because the engine had failed and I had no money, knowledge, time, or energy to fix it. It was all about image and a vague notion that I would live in it. In the end, it was just embarrassing. Story 89. I bought a used Saturn 4 years ago. The owner knew the transmission was failing. I did not. I was cheated. The car lasted only a week. Thanks to the person in Westview, Pennsylvania. Story 90. I loved the idea of the Oura Ring. It seems so cool. I hate wearing watches, but I always wanted to track my heart rate and sleep because I have chronic insomnia. It also looked stylish and inconspicuous. I spent $400 on the original ring. The ring was extremely uncomfortable. It was much thicker than a normal ring, and the inside had sensor bumps that dug into my finger, so I could not fully get used to it. It actually made my insomnia worse, and by the time I gave up trying to use it, it was past the return date. Story 91. I spent 99 cents on the song Banana Phone by Raffi during the iTunes era and regretted it immediately. Story 92. I bought the house because I was tired of paying rent. Even though my rent was only $400 per month with no utilities, my dad saw it and made the Star Wars line, "I have a bad feeling about this." I could not be talked out of it. I made it about 10 months in and got an awesome pup who was the best thing to come from the deal. I went into the hospital for a stay in the epilepsy monitoring unit to see if I could be a candidate for deep brain stimulation. The neurologist took me off my medication and I broke both my shoulders, so I was off work and living with my parents. 3 months later, I walked downstairs and found my mom dead in her bed, having suffered a massive heart attack in her sleep. I went back home and life went on. I got a new job and continued to move up. I completed training, met my new coworkers, and then one night my supervisor told us to take our computers home. I did not see them for a year and 3 months. When I returned to office work, I got a text from a friend in my hometown saying there was an opening. A lateral transfer? Same job, fewer people, more money. I should have put the house up for sale then and moved back in with my dad. But I wanted to work during the week and go back to my house on the weekends. I kept it because it was in a city and I am from a small town. Then the pipes burst and the house literally collapsed on itself. I think it was $60,000 worth of damage when 120,000 gallons of water flooded through it. I got it fixed and painted. The virus had calmed down and the housing market boomed. People were selling sight unseen for crazy amounts. My dad said sell it. One morning, he walked downstairs looking very yellow. He went to the hospital and doctors told him to see an oncologist immediately. It might be too late. He had pancreatic cancer. He lasted 5 months. I inherited the house I grew up in and broke even on the one I had to have. My dad's bad feeling was spot on. Story 93. A friend of mine was getting married, and 2 weeks before the wedding, one of his groomsmen had to drop out. He asked me to step in as a favor, and of course I did. It was a very fancy wedding in a foreign country, and the groomsmen needed tuxedos. Thinking I could use one for the rest of my life and expecting to need it for other formal events, since I had already rented a tux twice that year, I paid $600 for it. That was the last time I ever wore a tux. He is still my friend, but I have seen him only once since 20 years ago. They are divorced. Story 94. I got swindled into buying a painting from a local artist experiencing homelessness in a Target parking lot. The paintings were terrible, but they seemed nice and I felt bad, so I agreed to buy one. There was no set price, so she asked what I wanted to pay and I, being an anxious people pleaser, blurted out $70. At least it is a good story and hopefully it helped them. This happened a long time ago and I have not shopped at Target in years. Story 95. A $2,500 couch was so uncomfortable that after 5 days I called Habitat for Humanity to come pick it up. Story 96. I had a digital light processing 720p rear projection television in 2004. It cost $2,000 when I was working a $23,000 a year job. Input lag for video games was horrendous. I replaced the lamp twice for a lot of money, and the main board failed. I stupidly spent $500 to fix it instead of buying a new television. When we upgraded to a liquid crystal display television in 2010, I thought I could make a little money pawning it, but I had to give it away to Goodwill. Story 97. Friends took me to a strip club. I was uncomfortable. I did not want to go but wanted to be with friends. 2 women grabbed each of my arms. I just wanted to watch. I'm not a strip club person. I quickly said I had to use the bathroom. They walked me there and said they would wait for me when I came out. 15 minutes went by. I looked out and they were still there. I explained I did not want to be there and was not interested in a private dance. One of them asked if I had $5 for each of them. I reached into my wallet and handed one woman $5. When I turned to the other woman, I did not have $5, but I had a $20 bill. So I paid 2 women $25 to walk me to a bathroom. Quite possibly the single worst purchase of my life. Story 98. 2 women at the same time. One drugged me and they robbed me. Story 99. I am part of the car gang. I took out a loan. I cannot afford to buy a Bayerische Motoren Werke E92 335i. It has been all right so far, but even a small repair resulted in a large bill, so I am dreading something worse. Luckily, I make decent money, but not enough to get myself out of debt for a few years. Although it caused a lot of stress, it has also brought me the most happiness in a long time, and I love it. I would say it was worth the poor decision-making. Story 100. When I was 18 and new to buying things on the internet, I bought a cell phone from the United Kingdom. I lived in the United States, so I could not use it. My cousin's friend was planning to travel there and offered to buy it, but after the attacks on September 11, 2001, she decided not to travel because she did not want to fly. I later moved and abandoned most of my belongings, so I do not know what happened to the phone. I had completely forgotten about it until just now. Story 101. I do not know if it is the worst, but our mattress, which cost $1,500, is horrible. It is from Muse. I did a lot of research and tested it in a store. 10 minutes in a store does not equal 8 hours at home. The mattress was too expensive for us to replace and could not be returned. The edges and corners sink noticeably when you are near them. This experience has made me reluctant to make the same mistake when I replace it. Story 102. Low-key, it's the best and worst purchase I've ever made. My house has caused an incredible amount of work and stress, but it makes my heart sing when I come home and my wife is smiling so broadly because she hung one of her paintings without having to ask anyone. Story 103. When I was 18, I had a credit card from my dad that was intended as an allowance, but it had no spending limit. At a Renaissance fair with friends, A vendor pressured me into buying a wolf pelt for $275. I did not like the aesthetic and had no interest, but I felt so pressured that I bought it. I remember my cheeks burning with embarrassment. I was angry with myself as I paid, but I could not stop. 2 weeks later, he called to request the payment information again, and I gave it to him. He had convinced me to buy something I did not want twice. Story 104. I paid 2 years of tuition to study broadcasting at the local community college. When I graduated and started looking for work, I learned the hard way that the Canadian media sector is so small and consolidated that it is essentially a closed system. Story 105. I gave a diamond engagement ring to my first wife. She left me just over a year later and had a child with her now husband about 6 months after I left. If the child did not share his father's short neck, I would wonder. Both of them have to turn at the shoulders to see anything besides themselves. Story 106. A fire pit advertised as smokeless, but it is not and has been used only 4 or 5 times. Story 107. $20,000 or more on veterinary bills for the best boy in the world. He did not make it. It was basically, you can do this surgery and he will likely be fine and have a normal quality of life and lifespan, or you can euthanize him now. He was acting like his usual self. Active, happy, playing with other dogs and running around. We had been together since he was a puppy and he meant the world to me. So I loaded him in my car in the middle of the night and drove for hours to get him into surgery at one of the best animal hospitals in the country. He did well in surgery despite some unforeseen complications, but took a nosedive in recovery. When it was clear it was time to let him go, I did, and I was able to hold him and love him as he left the world. Now I am in significant debt and my previously excellent credit score is a mess. It was the worst purchase I ever made. Honestly, I do not regret it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.